this first live webinar sponsored by the University of Texas El Paso, the Latino Research Institute at UT Austin, and the Latino Researchers Network. This seminar is about fostering Latina leadership, but we were talking here that it's applicable to everybody in everyday life. We have two wonderful guest speakers at UTEP and UT Austin. You'll hear from them today. My name is Ivonne Santiago. I'm a clinical professor here at the University of Texas at El Paso. I'm a civil engineer. Here, but I'm so glad to be here. We're surrounded by wonderful people here that are interested in being mentors to Latinas or that are Latinas that want to become leaders. And so now we'll leave the microphone to our colleagues at UT Austin. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ivonne. So hi, everybody. My name is Melissa DuPont-Reyes. I am the Carlos Castañeda Postdoctoral Research Fellow at the Latino Research Initiative. And I just wanted to thank you all for coming today for this pilot event across Texas. It's really exciting. And before I introduce Deborah, who's the director of the Latino Research Initiative, I just wanted to thank our staff who helped coordinate this event, including Megan and Luis and Lizzie and our tech folks here. So we could just thank them all for all of their support. Would not have been possible without their efforts. So without further ado, here's Deborah Parra-Medina, the director of the Latino Research Initiative.
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everybody. It's so great to see you here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this inaugural event. As Melissa said, I am Deborah Parra-Medina. I'm director of the Latino Research Initiative here at UT that was established in 2016. Our initiative seeks to build and sustain a community of engaged scholars who produce interdisciplinary research that informs policy and actions to improve the well-being of Mexican Americans and Latino communities. We're committed to building and strengthening pathways to successful research careers for Latinos through mentorship programs, summer institutes, research internships, fellowships, and networks. And this is, of course, one of our activities to develop a network around Latina researchers and helping support the development of leaders and academic scholars. Today, I want to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is, before I do that, I did want to shout out to the campuses that are viewing in addition to UTEP. And here in Austin, we have a group that's viewing us from Texas Tech University in Lubbock. Yay, Red Raiders. We also have University of Houston, Clear Lake on. We have Texas A&M University as well. We also have somebody from Wisconsin that's viewing as well. So it's great to have you joining us through the webosphere. I don't know what it is. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy our event. So I wanted to introduce our speaker, Dr. Cynthia de las Fuentes, who works in private practice here in Austin, offering psychotherapy and assessment services. A prior career, she was a faculty member, a professor in psychology, and she brings both experiences to share as her academic research career developed, but also her professional leadership as well. So I think that's going to be great. Also, her focus area is on the ethics of psychology, feminist psychology, and multicultural programs. And of course, she's done several presentations and publications. Leadership is one of the areas that she does enjoy speaking about. And I'm glad that she's here with us today to share her expertise and speak to us about strategies for success in the academy. So welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's so nice to be here. I really appreciate being invited. And it's so lovely to see this room. I'm feeling a little emotional.
I don't know the last time I was in a room of Latina scholars before. It's been a while, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Today, what I'm going to talk about, probably too fast because Melissa reminded me that I didn't rehearse my 35 slides or 37 slides to make it into 30 minutes. But very quickly, what I would like for us to focus on, or what I would like to focus on today, is on a kind of a mentoring moment, okay? And so this talk is geared towards grad students and early career professionals. And they are, so what I want to do is I want to give a brief overview of the political landscape, how it's changed since I was in graduate school and becoming a professor and a researcher. And I want to tap into getting you to focus on your own reflection on what you need for your success. What's the best fit for you in terms of the institutional fit. And then lastly, I'd like to talk to you about maximizing your opportunities for success in the promotion and tenure process, okay? So higher education has changed quite a bit since I started out. I was a grad student in the 1980s, and it's changed quite significantly, especially with regards to the commodification of education. Have we heard of the name Rex Tillerson bantied about as a chancellor? You know, I mean, where does he come from? He comes from industry. I don't even know what his education is, but he comes from industry. But why are they considering it? Well, they're considering it because Texas and UT has a lot of oil, gas and oil and that kind of stuff, and they want somebody who knows that, knows how to manage that. And so it becomes a business, right? Used to be all nonprofit, you know, and the legislature used to supply a lot of the money for it. The legislatures have been pulling back and pulling back and pulling back, and now we're even talking about students as being consumers, right? They're focusing a lot on accountability. That's the buzzword in leadership now in academia. That's fairly new, right? And so they want to know what the bottom line is. Are you profitable? Are the we have to have enough robust undergraduate class to support the master's and doctoral students. We have to bring in grants where before all you had to do was write and publish and do your own little thing in your own, and the university would sponsor your labs. And now you have to get outside funding too. So it's quite diverse and quite big now. I mean, different. The difference between when I was in graduate school in the 80s is quite different to now. This is also another big thing. I don't know if you're aware of this, what's happening up in Wisconsin and other universities, but the legislatures are getting very involved, and the elected officials are getting involved. And we know this, like in Arizona, when they have fights in the legislature about whether or not we can have Latino studies programs or ethnic studies programs in the public schools, right? And so public elected officials are telling us and why, what to do, but why? Because they're funding part of, you know, the success or the institution, right? And so, oops, I don't know what's going on. But anyway, but more and more institutions are, did I push a button? Sorry. And so more and more institutions are looking to Wisconsin to try to see if they can modify tenure, get rid of tenure, whatever. The important thing about tenure, though, is that it gives us degrees of freedom and you know, the free speech and whatnot. And that's being eroded and eroded. When you get rid of tenure, and a lot of institutions are doing that, we also start thinking about accountability and the profit margins or the bottom lines for success for some institutions. It means that we end up over time going to more and more affiliated faculty. We end up having more and more adjunct faculty, contingent faculty. Why? Because they're less expensive, and they can teach multiple sections of classes and whatnot. The problem is that then that also, that it fails to consider and to appreciate the burden on the faculty, the full-time faculty and the tenured faculty, because then who does the advising? Not the adjunct faculty. Who then gets evaluated for the service? Adjunct faculty. Who has to bring in more research dollars? Not the adjunct faculty. And so it ends up being a two-tiered system. The quality of life, if you have read about this, for adjunct faculty is very, very hard. It's very difficult. Some of you may be adjunct faculty. Try living on that alone. But it's changing quite a bit. And this was not common when I was in graduate school in the 1980s. So who do we serve? If you study us, if you study Latinos, you know, and if you study people of color, you know what the stats are, the census and whatever. More and more, we are becoming a much more diverse country. We still have majority white, but our numbers are rising and expanding, and certainly, we're going to be seeing more and more young people. But who's teaching them? Who are their faculty? Okay, let me go back over here. Latinos, would I put it up here? Yeah, up here. So Hispanics, because that's census, right? It's 16%, and it's going to be more and more. We're going to be more and more, right? But look over here. Look at our numbers. There's Hispanic male, Hispanic female. All the way over here, 2%, 2%, 2%. Oh, there's 3% right here. Associate professors, okay? And so even though we are larger in numbers in terms of our population, who's teaching is still predominantly white, right? So you know how important it is to have somebody who looks like you, who's teaching your classes, to mentor you and everything. But what's happening over here, right? So there's a disconnect, right? These numbers have not changed since I was in graduate school. Lots of things have changed. These numbers have not changed. When you are one of the only ones in an institution, we end up being taxed and burdened and considered sometimes a token and the spokesperson for everybody who is brown or everybody who's got Hispanic surnames or, people like us, right? But we also end up being, having to have more advisees, right? Because remember the numbers of the student, I don't know if I mentioned, but the numbers of the student population, students are more and more becoming people of color, but the faculty is different, right? But the students of color, if they had a choice, many of them choose us, right? And so when I was a professor, I had 30 graduate advisees at one point. 1 year, I chaired 8 dissertations in 1 year. That's a lot, right? And my white colleagues, they get their students and they work hard too, but we work a little extra harder, or I felt like I did. And in fact, the research shows that I did work extra hard. I remember complaining one time to my dean, and I said, I feel culturally taxed. And she says, you're a Hispanic woman, everybody wants you. Well, everybody wants me, but it was also policy of our institution that we had to have representation on all of our committees, right? So I lived in San Antonio, worked in San Antonio. The student body was 75% Hispanic, 75% female, 75% first generation college student. I was number 8 in the history of the institution in the over 100 years to be tenured as tenured Hispanic faculty, number 8, right? And so I was being culturally taxed. I was on more committees. I was doing more work than some of my other faculty. And that's what happens when we become one of the only ones, right? And one of the things that I got to do, because they had this diversity initiative, was that I got appointed chair of the diversity task force. And I studied race, racism, and attitudes towards people of color on my campus. And It's true. They thought I was second tier. They thought my research was not as good as theirs. They thought my publication record wasn't as good as theirs. And they weren't even required to publish. I was the one that was required to publish, and I was publishing. And so even in the face of that, they still had this attitude that I was an affirmative action hire. Or worse, there was rumors that I accepted the chair of the Department of Straight Woman to get a job. So that's some of the background, and that's some of the things those are burdens that we have to face if we're going to be living and working and thriving in an academic setting, right? And so what I want to do is switch gears a little bit to talk about more of how to prepare yourself to become successful in academia. All right. How much? Okay, keep every 5 minutes. Thanks. Preparing for an academic career begins in grad school. It actually begins earlier. If you're an undergraduate, if you have opportunities to do research, help faculty members, do volunteer work on faculty members' research and whatnot. But it begins in graduate school. And most of you probably know it's better for you if you have taken multiple courses in stats and research design and methodologies and whatnot so that you're better prepared. My sister, I was telling Melissa, my sister is a physician. She does primarily research, and when she was an undergraduate, she had 3 publications in JAMA before she graduated. It's that kind of stuff. Not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody can, but who you hook up with, because she was not first or second or even third author. I think she was like 8 when she was an undergrad, maybe 9. But do it. Get out there, get the experience, and get going. Postdocs, though, are incredible and really necessary, especially for research careers. And during this time, this is important. A lot of people don't think about it because they think about, oh, I have to apply for a job. Let me get started now on a CV. No, you have to get started on a curriculum vitae as soon as you arrive. You just keep adding to it, get feedback on it. Different disciplines have different structures and of how to what a format is for a resume, for a vita. Vitas aren't like typical resumes. It's not like that one-page thing where you have your objective at the top. They want to see everything on there. Maybe not that you work for Buster Brown Shoes or whatever, when you were in high school, but they want to see everything that may be related. There are different types of institutions, right? I worked at a predominantly teaching institution. It was an undergraduate institution. I wanted to work with Latinas, and so I chose Our Lady of the Lake University, and I did not regret that choice. I worked in the doctoral program, master's and doctoral program, and a lot of teaching institutions like that one, we have publishing requirements for the doctoral, for the graduate faculty, okay? So, but because it was predominantly teaching, my teaching load was a little bit higher, my mentoring and advising load was a little bit higher, but I was also able to not be as stressed about publishing or perishing, because teaching was maybe even as valued or a little bit more valued in that institution than it would have been in a Research One institution, right? And so figure out what institution is right for you. Do you want to be more of an advisor, work more with students, work more with research? Just figure that out, and only you can tell. If you notice that in your graduate work you end up doing more service-related work than research, that may be a clue. If you're organizing the student bodies, if you're organizing groups and whatever, that may be a clue. It doesn't mean that you can't be both. It just means that listen to yourself and honor that. It's okay. I got to be kind of like a little bit of a twinkling star because I was doing research in that institution, and I like being a little bit of a twinkling star. Here, I probably wouldn't have gotten tenured because I would have been the busted out star or whatever, that supernova that dies. So this is what I'm saying. So what's the fit, what's the best fit? What's the workload that's associated with the type of institution that you're going to be affiliating with? These are, if you're looking for an entry-level position, these are the kinds of questions that you would want to be asking yourself. A lot of this information you can find via the internet. It's public information, so do your homework and then start targeting where you want to go and what you want to do. Again, this information, a lot of it is going to be on the internet, but you're going to want to know what's the goodness of fit for you. I wanted to work with Latinas. I chose San Antonio. I chose an institution that had 75% Latinas, Hispanic women. And so I got an opportunity to do that. And I loved it. I loved it and don't have regrets about it. But what do you want to do? What community do you want to be in and hang out in? From in-person interviews, you can learn about the value of diversity and inclusiveness within the department just by having conversations, just by having pay attention to the clues. People will drop clues all the time, just by having conversations. Now, in recent years, academic programs and departments know how to convey what their values are and diversity values are. But a lot of that, if you don't look deeper, a lot of that's just requirements from EEOC type of things, right? And so the EEOC says we're non-discriminating, we welcome all people from, and in particular, blah, 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 right? We don't discriminate against whatever, right? But you have to dig a little bit deeper to get some of these answers, right? And you have to go there and you have to eyeball the place and the people. And this is important, especially for researchers. Where's your population? Who is your population? The institution that you're interested in, does it have your population? If it doesn't, why do they want you? And are they willing to support you? Will they give you funds to go to your population? That's big. That's really important. And additionally important is who is in the community where you're going to be living. Are there going to be people like you? If you're single, do they have your dating pool in that community? That's important, right? Can somebody work on your hair? That's a big deal. If you're going to be crying because you can't get your hair done, that's no good. You're depressed for years, or you have to go visit home, every 3 months or every 2 months to get your hair done. I'm seeing some nods over there. I have a friend who moved to Minnesota from here. She moved to Minnesota, and about a month into it, she's calling me, she's sobbing. Cynthia, they don't have fresh cilantro up here in the grocery stores. They got some shit called coriander. And she's like crying, I can't get me no cilantro. So of course I'm mailing her, care packages and stuff like that. But that's a big deal. She was sobbing. These are big deals, and these are important questions to ask yourself and be introspective. What kind of support do I need from the community that I'm in? What kind of support do I need from the institution that I'm in? Am I doing okay? One of the big things that I always told my students and junior colleagues is consult. Get mentored. Consult. And that's the rest of this talk is about consulting and getting mentored for the next steps of what you're going to be needing to do. Nobody ever told me I needed to negotiate a salary. I walked in and they said, we want to hire you. And I said, thank you. Thank you. I feel so grateful for choosing me. And then 2 years later, they posted a position and they were negotiating a salary. They got a male applying for an entry-level position, and he was offered $12,000 more than me. Like, what the? And so I told my dean, I said, that's fair. And she goes, oh, we got you cheap. Nobody had my back. They didn't have my back. They adjusted my salary, but not to consider the years of service, just adjusted up to his level that they were giving it to him, which I was, again, grateful for, because nobody ever told me that I can negotiate stuff like this, right? And so this is really important. We have to practice. How many of us have practiced negotiating salaries? Oh, one out of a room of how many here? Really? And you got mentored and you got told, right? Somebody had to tell you, oye, chica, come on. Now practice with me, tell me. No, you know, esta porquería no vale. You know, you have to say, what this is how you want to value me? What kind of an asset do you think I might be? Not exactly like that, but you know, you have to have that kind of, you have to value your own self, your own work, your own potential. Because nobody's gonna do it unless you do it. And we teach people how to treat us. You have to treat yourself well enough to know that you are valuable and you deserve 10% more than the last person they hired. This is also something that's very important, is that make sure that you know what the expectations are for everything. Everything. What do I need to do to get tenured? What do I need to, some institutions are separated from promotion and tenure. A lot of teaching institutions will do promotion at year 3 or 4 and tenure at 7. Other research institutions do both promotion and tenure year 7 and then beyond. But find out what the expectations are, and you can negotiate things like that. You can negotiate course load releases. You can negotiate being released from committee work for the first year or 2 while you ramp up your research, while you get acclimated, while you prep new courses, because a lot of us have to prep new courses if we haven't already taught them, right? And we need to be clear, this is me mentoring and advising, clear that if there are added or unique responsibilities that are heavier than those of other faculty members, to get compensated for that, to get it weighed equally or more than other kinds of work, right? To get extra pay if necessary. I was on more committees than my white colleagues because of that policy, right? Okay, come on, Cynthia, come on. I didn't know I could negotiate that, to have that counted. That's called service, and that's usually down over here when they consider what kind of, how they're going to evaluate you for P&T. Okay. Now, of course, not all of us, just because we're brown, do research on brown people, right? Not all of us, because we're brown, can teach the diversity courses or the Latina site courses. I do, but that's me. And certainly, straight white men aren't going to be expected to teach Latino psychology or African American studies, courses or whatever, right? So who does that go to? That goes to us, even though we might not be prepared for it, because our research interests may not be in that area, right? And so negotiate. If you're expected to do that and you're inclined to do that, negotiate. If you're not inclined to do that, say, dude, my area is in something else. What are you talking about? Why are you hiring me? You just hired me because I got the brown face for your check boxes, check. And so figure it out, and you can negotiate all kinds of things. I've talked about this here, and this is very important, and I'm also if there's many times when we might have to be on diversity committees, or we have to be on and so just figure out, get it weighed as much as other kinds of committees. If you're valuable to the institution, to the department, and to the program, make sure and get it weighed properly. How comfortable are we protecting and promoting ourselves? That's the whole purpose of this part of the job. So consult and get mentors. This is really, really important. And this is really important too, is that women faculty, junior faculty, are more likely to get promoted and tenured if they've been mentored by other women. But guess how hard it is to do that? It's really hard, because why? Because they're overburdened too. And they're saying, I know, not another person. I like you, but let me pass you off to somebody else because I'm exhausted. Don't take that personally, but fight for it. Okay, because it's important. I had one female faculty member in my department that I really wanted to work with because her research aligned with mine, and she had too many advisees. So I lied to her and told her that I have a co-chair. And she believed it for a long time, and then so she was mentoring me, and then I did have to get a co-chair, but because she caught on. But just figure out how to get that kind of mentorship. You're gonna have to try to strive for this, right? Obviously, you guys are getting mentored in research and on how to secure grants. So I'm gonna just go through this quickly. Sometimes in the beginning, it's easier to get institutional funding. Sometimes in the beginning, always in the beginning, it's easier to get that. Always in the beginning, it's easier to get state funding or foundation funds than it is to go for the NIH types of funds or the CDC types of funds. So focus on, when you're starting and building, focus on some of those things because you might be more successful in that area. Get feedback. There are other ways of doing research. You don't have to be the PI on everything. Work with somebody, collaborate with other people, find those connections. We already talked a little bit about that. Oh, this is really important, and nobody ever taught me this one, is that, when you're applying for a grant, that's a really good literature review. You can do a talk off of that. You can probably publish a paper off of your reviews, off of your pilot data, off of things like that. So don't throw those away. Don't think, I can't use this, or it's not nobody wants it. You got to keep going after it. Most applications fail the first time. Don't take it personally. Because the funding levels and the acceptance rates for these things are down to the single digits and for certain types of grants. And so don't take it personally. It's about goodness of fit, right? Find a better fit. So publish as many pieces of your dissertation as you can. Publish steadily, protect your writing. That's going to be critical. Join a writing group, form one, join one, keep it going. You got to protect yourself and advocate for yourself in this area. Not all journals are created equally. I was on promotion and tenure committee, and I had faculty members that had publication lists that were like several pages long, and I'm like, I've never even heard of these, and these are in my field. Well, when I researched them, they're more like vanity presses, right? Be careful, be very careful. And unfortunately, just as it's more difficult to get peer recognition for research and gender issues or issues of culture, ethnicity, and race, it's often more difficult to get that research published in the most prestigious and mainstream journals, okay? Just keep at it, find a better fit, okay? Don't take it personally, okay? It's a business, don't take it personally. Try not to do new preps. Do as few new preps as possible. Those eat up time. It eats up a lot of time. Try to negotiate multiple sections of the same course. Same courses over at a time. You might be bored, but you're not going to be focused. When you're going up for tenure and for promotion, they're going to be focusing on your research. Be innovative there, not so much in the classroom. And I hate to say this because this is where we get our advisees, and this is where the students connect with us. You gotta protect yourself. Going back to that earlier thing, protect yourself and promote yourself. This is one of the ways to do it. Later, you can go to town on teaching and whatever. If you do have to do things that are outside of your area, because some smaller programs or departments will say, oh, Melissa, you're not an expert on doing Latino psychology or whatever, but we need you to do it because you're so pretty and brown. You negotiate a course load reduction while you're preparing for it, right? This is one of those unfortunate truths, is that women and people of color, if you look at some of the research on faculty evaluations and teaching evaluations, women and people of color often do get poorer evaluations. Why? They get poorer evaluations because we tend to teach those classes that have a higher diversity of content. And some people take that stuff personally, right? Some people will say, but you're not talking about me. And the worst teaching evaluations that I ever got was because I wanted to talk about gerrymandering, I wanted to talk about the Voting Rights Act, and I wanted to talk about the disenfranchisement of people. There was in a psychology course. I wanted to talk about structural disenfranchisement, institutional disenfranchisement of people of color in a multicultural psychology class. And they said, but how come you didn't teach us about how to do therapy with Latinos, or how to do therapy with, with African Americans? We wanted a class in this and a class in that and a class in that. I was like, yeah, but, go read about that. I signed a reading. But it's because they kind of took it personally, right? I was trying to go meta. Okay, I was told I have 3 minutes, and so I'm going to go fast. I'm so glad that you have the handouts. And can we email those the slides to the other people in the other programs? Thank you. I appreciate that. So here's something that's going to be important. Always mentoring, get mentoring, consult. There's the piece about what are you going to do now that you get promoted. Here's something that's going to be important. How to cope with a negative decision. It happens more than we want to believe. It happens probably, yes, more than we want to believe. Some of my favorite and best instructors when I was a graduate student did not get tenure because they were really good faculty members. They were really good instructors. They were not good researchers, or they didn't produce the kind of research that the department wanted or needed. So figure out, get support, know when you need to get professional help. I'm a psychologist, I'm telling you this, know when you need the support. Recognize that your emotions and your feelings of feeling dejected and demoralized are normal, and you will get over it. It'll be okay. It'll be okay, right? There's some unwritten rules that can sink or swim you in any kind of department. Some departments are very social, some are not very social. So some of it is about goodness of fit. Play nice, be good, play nice, go to the social events. I'm saying take your medicine if you've got social anxiety. Don't use your colleagues, your staff, or your students for sexual, romantic, and social needs. Just don't. Get a life outside of the institution. It can get messy, and I've seen it sink careers. Don't use students for babysitting, dog sitting, or house sitting. All of those things were done to me, and I resented it. I felt like I couldn't say no. What happened if the kid got sick? That's another story. Don't share rooms with students at conferences. Hook them up with another student, pay for a room. Just take it. You take the hit, the financial hit. That's not okay to do because impressions matter, perceptions matter. Learn to say no. Thank you so much for thinking about me. I really appreciate it. I can't, unfortunately, as much as I would love to do this, I can't right now because I need to preserve my blah, 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 my time, my writing space, whatever. Will you please keep me in mind for a future opportunity? Unfortunately, right now I can't. Learn to say those things and protect yourself. Do make self-care a priority. Focus on the trinity of wellness, sleep, diet, and exercise. I'm a psychologist, right? And I do private practice, and we have an informed consent. So here's the informed consent for you all. Academic life can have its benefits and risks. You may experience uncomfortable feelings like sadness, guilt, anger, and frustration, loneliness, and helplessness. On the other hand, the process of becoming tenured has also been shown to have benefits for people who go through it, not to mention the people with whom you mentor. Tenure often leads to better salaries, teaching loads, and solutions to the stress and pressures to publish, significant reductions in the feelings of distress, and great satisfaction in mentoring others. There are no guarantees of what you will experience. In order for life in the academy to be most successful for you, you will have to work on the things we talked about, both today and in the future with your peers and students. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. So I did mention a little bit about the format. So what we're going to do next is we're going to hold questions. We're going to turn the speaking over to our speaker at UTEP. And Ivonne will provide the introduction. And then we're actually going to do a Q&A afterwards with both the speakers. So I will turn it over to Ivonne.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guillermina. I have the great pleasure of introducing our guest speaker, one of our own, Dr. Nuñez. She's an associate professor of anthropology and director of the Women and Gender Studies at UTEP. She's also a mother of a 10-year-old son in 5th grade. That's a very important role. Dr. Nuñez is a faculty partner to Vice Latina International's LEAD program. It's a leadership initiative for women in El Paso. And her most recent publication is a co-edited book on community engagement and high-impact practices in higher education. So Dr. Nuñez is going to look at the other side of the coin and talk about how we can maximize our cultural wealth. Thank you for being here.
Can you hear me okay? The other institutions, Austin?
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we just don't see your presentation. But I think Alejandro's on it. He looks like he's on the computer.
Alejandro's sharing the presentation right now. Just a second.
Okay.
Okay, so I really like our story, so I'm going to give you a really quick background of who I am and how I came to UTEP. I am from California. I'm a child of Mexican immigrants. I grew up as a migrant farm worker, moving every 2 or 3 months until I graduated from high school. I got a BA in business, Master's in Latin American Border Studies, and PhD in cultural anthropology. So I went from business to social sciences, right? I came to UTEP in 2005. I did a 1-year stint as a visiting professor, and I taught a very heavy course load while finishing my dissertation, working nights and weekends on it, until I was able to defend and graduate in 2006. So I was already teaching classes and trying to finish a dissertation. I don't recommend that, right? While being on the 10-year track, I got pregnant. I had a son with special needs. My son has had 11 surgeries. So that means I had to pump so I could pump milk into him and go through all these surgeries while being on the 10-year track. That's important because being a mother mattered to me, and those are decisions individually as feminist scholars that we need to make, whether to have children or not, and there's never a perfect time, right? But the clock ticks, so I thought this would be important for me to have. And then I worked for 3 years with a team of therapists for my son to be able to eat, walk, talk. So that meant I went on a teaching schedule of Tuesday, Thursdays, because I was with therapists Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, while doing my teaching, my research, and my writing in evenings and weekends. I integrated my research, my personal and professional life, and learned the power of surrender early on, that I couldn't do everything. And I think that being a mother of a special needs child really forced me to challenge what I thought about myself, right? I thought I could do it all. But when you have a child with special needs, you really need to say, I need help. So I think that was one of the most humbling lessons I had as a Chicana scholar. I'm now tenured associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology. We have someone here who is part of the NSF Advanced Grant, and I was hired through an NSF Advanced Grant, so I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And then in 2015, I stepped into a director position as the first Chicana chair of Women in Gender Studies at UTEP. So that's really important because look at our demographics, right? That I represent the student population where I'm teaching, and it's really important for me. My research is on colonias, service learning, immigration, access to healthcare, Latinas in STEM, Latina identity, engaging scholarship with community. So I have all these topics that I've written about, because I am an applied anthropologist. So the needs of my community oftentimes help influence my scholarship, right? And so sometimes it's working with children, with our communities, immigration, based on what's happening in our community. I constantly, because I am chair of Women and Gender Studies, get invited to speak on gender issues. So every Women's History Month, I'm on everybody's menu. And so that's a real challenge because we became tokenized, and Cynthia spoke to that a few minutes ago. So I'm coming to speak to you about some of the challenges and opportunities of being a Latina and positions of leadership in the academy, right? And why it's important for us to invest in each other and build on our cultural wealth as we move along. Okay, so why am I here today? I always share this very powerful Mayan quote with my students and my colleagues and my community. Elak ech alakin, you are my other me. Tú eres mi otro yo. So if I invest in you, I'm investing in me. If I'm investing in our students, we're investing in the professionals of our community. If we're investing in community, then I think we're going to be better off because one person cannot do it all. So this is really important in how we see ourselves in the academy and how we choose to make ourselves visible. Because if I don't know you exist, it's really hard for me to build a community with you or to build a relationship with you. So for us as Latinas, many times, because we're so few of us, we become visible, whether we want to or not. You're it. And so for the first few years that I got hired, I was the only Chicana in my department in front of an elevator. Everybody would come into my office. And I would look at people and say, what class are you in? I'm not in your classes. Why are you here? Because you look like me. Right? Because this professor sent me to you. Because your door was open. So I always had people outside my door, right? And I realized, whoa, what need we have for people who look like me in the academy. Okay, and I think it's important that we know ourselves, each other, in our fields. So this is a lesson I learned at a national conference when an African-American woman went up to another African-American woman and said, I don't believe we have met yet, right? And I adopted that, I'm thanking her now, I don't know her name, because we need to know each other. So every time we walk around campus and say, I don't know if we met yet, but we need to know each other. And that means getting out of our comfort zone. We have to, right? When I'm at a national conference, there's like 20 of us. And people told me, there's like 20 of you in the nation. 20? Yeah. 2 just retired. Now we're 18. Okay, so if we're it in the room, if we're it in the institution, in our fields, we need to know each other. And that means we have to build that courage to get out and say, I don't believe we've met yet. As Latina scholars, we need to recognize the hidden expectations we have in and outside of the academy that oftentimes our white male scholars do not have. There are expectations of what it means to have some of us inside the academy. As Latina scholars and leaders, we need to form our communities or our affinity groups to provide the social support networks that we need to feel connected, to feel that we are empathic towards each other and that we're treating each other with respect and compassion because we're already carrying a heavy load. So I'm not here to critique you, I'm here to encourage you. And we have to, instead of just calling each other out, calling each other in and saying, I don't think we met. What are you doing? What are you teaching? What department are you in? How long have you been here? Just walk around the universities and we don't know each other. And then we go to national organizations. We don't always know each other. We have to build on our funds of knowledge. And that's really important for me because it's part of my academic formation. I'm going to talk about that definition and our cultural wealth. Oftentimes as scholars of color, we get compared, right? We get referred to as minority scholars. And so that kind of puts us in a deficit model of what we lack, right? Of what we lack. Like, oh, they're a minority and they are. I'm like, no, we come in with lots of skills, with lots of cultural capital, with lots of resources. And then how do we use that to build relationships, not only in the academy, but in the communities that we live in? Because they know, okay, they hired a brown one, right? There's a Latina in that department. Have her be our speaker, have her be our mentor, have her give us a workshop. So if I say yes to every invitation in the community, I wouldn't be in the classroom ever, right? It's impossible to say yes to everything. But we need to know each other and say, you know, maybe I can't, but my other colleague's in education, or my other colleague is in health sciences. Why don't we give her a call? So knowing each other helps us distribute these expectations that our community has of us. And then gratitude. I always think about gratitude, and we're part of a kindness community. Because it doesn't matter how smart you are. We also need kindness. We need also joy in our lives. And so I consciously think about how we can cultivate that on campus. And then I want to acknowledge the organizers for today, for all of you to choose to spend your time, your afternoon with us. And acknowledge also the women that I've learned from in these communities in the U.S.-Mexico border called colonias. And these are mostly immigrant women who came and had higher expectations of what life in the United States would be like. And they realized that these communities didn't have water and infrastructure and roads. And they went and fought for their communities. And I've learned so much from them because they went and met with their governor and demanded an investment in the infrastructure of their communities. And I asked my students, how many of you have met your governor? How many of you have met your congressman, your senator? Right? Because the women I interviewed did. And because they did and they were fierce, they were bringing light and resources to their community. So I refer to them as chispas. I've identified other parts of the literature that refers to women as chispas or sparks. So one of my goals for today is that you see yourselves as that light. That every time we enter a room, we come to give. We come to give light. We come to give encouragement. That our stories matter. Our training, our participation in the academy matters. Because we're not here to ask, we're coming to give. And we have significant assets to contribute in our fields and in our communities. Okay, so I'm on this slide. So here, why are we here today? Why are there so few of us? I want to start with this short story. A few years ago, I applied to be a faculty fellow to AHI, the American Association of Hispanics in Higher Ed. And these are mostly higher ed leaders throughout the United States. And there were about 20 PhD students and about 7 faculty fellows. And we all sat in a room and looked at each other. We were all exhausted. And then they said, why are we here? Because there's about 2%, 2.7% of all PhD recipients in the United States that are Latina and Latino, of which a percentage of that goes back to Latin America. And so if you look at the number of Chicana, Latina professionals in the academy, we're less than 2%, right? After you have certain folks go back to their countries of origin. And then we realize, we're like, wow, no wonder there's so few of us. No wonder we're so tired. No wonder, right? We look around the room, and I think after a while, everybody started to tear up and cry. No wonder we're so tired. There are so few of us. And so we began to ask, why are there so few of us? How do we shatter that notion of the pipeline that's leaking and transform that pipeline and mentor undergrads and encourage them to see themselves as scholars, as leaders, and then go on to a master's, and then go on to a PhD? Because we have to actively construct and deconstruct this notion of higher education and who is here to serve, right? Because we're not in it. We have to be willing to transform it. So if you hear our tones of voice, sometimes they become a little bit aggressive. No, we belong here. Look at our demographics. Our students need to see themselves reflected in their faculty, their mentors, and they need to see us pulling them through, encouraging them to get out of those comfort zones. So it's really important for us to make it in the academy so that we can be here to teach, to mentor, support, and partner up with others to see our students through. So I'm going to go on to the next slide, and a little bit of how I started to publish in my own story. I had a colleague saying, you're not going to get tenure writing about your story. Well, the first thing that I got published solo on my own without a PhD professor was my story as a child of migrant farm workers. And it was a book that was called something about roots and homelands. It's called Homelands. The book is called Homelands. And so I sent my publication called In Search of the Next Harvest. And this is a story of being a migrant farm worker kid. And later on, I found that my story is used in classes of 500 students at UC Santa Barbara in the class taught on La Chicana, right? And so someone's like, they used your story in La Chicana. They have 500 students. And so I reached out to the professor and I said, tell me, how are your students responding to my story? And they said, well, it's a great example of intersectionality. It's in a very simple way they can relate to it. Or now it's motivating them to write their stories, right? Later on, I learned that my colleagues in the Department of Education were using my story to teach teachers, right, to prepare teachers how to work with migrant and immigrant children. And so for that colleague that said your story doesn't matter, right, your story's not enough, you're not enough, you're not going to get tenure on your story. I think that short story has had more legs than a lot of my other articles and publications. Okay, if you're interested, my emails are, I'll send it to you. So what I'd like to synthesize from what I've learned as a child of migrant farm workers and how I've learned to reclaim those lessons learned, to use them in navigating the academy, is that change is part of life, right? That if you move, you will find. And I think that's what we learned. For us to have a living, we had to move. In the academy, many of us are migrants. We have to leave our homes to go find positions throughout the nation that will value what we have. That we have to learn to observe and figure things out along the way. We don't always have a direct pathway. Higher education has not been part of the experience of our families and our communities. So we have to observe, we have to find those mentors, we have to constantly ask and try to figure out these new environments and not be afraid of them. And we make friends wherever we go. My son is constantly asking me, is she your friend? Well, she is now, right? Because I'm here to build relationships and to encourage people. And everywhere I go, I had to figure things out. And if I would make friends, then they would help me navigate their terrain. Yes, it would protect me or say, stay away from here. That's where you get detention. Don't go in that place. That's for the kindergartners. I didn't know that, right? And if you don't know that, you go into uncharted territory, you get in trouble. And then, so I learned to use a lot of the agricultural metaphors of my life, such as grow where you're planted, right? We're here. We're going to give fruit. Wherever we're at, we're coming to give. And we're hardworking people, because that's what I learned from my parents, an amazing work ethic. So I don't know if it's oftentimes to our deficit, because they know we work hard. That's why they keep on asking us to do more, right? And then I love this phrase of júntate un buen árbol y buena sombra te cobija. And find those strong trees that are going to cover you with their shade, and that's their mentorship. They're going to say, come with me to this conference. Come with me, I'm going to introduce you to my colleague. Come with me, you should consider submitting a proposal, send your chapter. If I didn't know these people, they wouldn't be inviting me. So many of my initial publications were invited because I was part of these national networks and I was getting invited to serve on panels with highly established scholars. Move out of your comfort zone. I cannot say this enough. We get really comfortable and we're afraid to leave our comfort zone. But my family's in California. I love them to pieces. But I've been really valued at Utah. This is where I think I can make a big difference and contribution. And ask for help. Just because we're the Chicana scholar in our department doesn't mean you have to do everything, right? Find your allies, find your friends. They don't always look like us, but they're there if we're willing to ask for help. We cannot always do it on our own. I think we can get a lot done on our own, but we don't always have to. And then, of course, express gratitude along the way, because I think that's really important. We don't get a lot of high fives in academia. So we are the ones who have to recognize the contributions of others, right? And to begin to create a scholarly community that is much more cohesive and not so individualistic. Okay, so I want to go into cultural wealth. What have we learned from our ancestors? This is really important for me as an anthropologist, and recognizing that we are not alone, that every time we enter our room, we come in with our mothers, our grandmothers, and the other women in our community, and all their cultural wisdom, right? And their DNA. So I always say, how would my grandma do this? How would my mom do this? So I've learned lessons about spirituality and faith and healing and creativity and love and resourcefulness and facing life with tenacity. My mother came, she didn't know English, she had 5 children. And I said, she didn't even know English, and she figured it out, so stop complaining. I'm going to figure it out, right? What did my mom do? She would always park on the sidewalk. I've learned not to do that, right? So there's all these lessons we learned, and a lot of it is a lot of humor. I appreciate hearing Cynthia laugh, because I laugh a lot. So oftentimes people don't know if I'm joking or if I'm telling the truth, because you're always laughing. But we have to find that humor in those spaces where it's not always funny, right? So we carry their lessons, those stories with us, their memories, and their legacies, right? So my mother and my grandmother were healers. And so when I became a doctor, they said, what is it that you heal, right? ¿Qué curas? And I said, well, minds, hearts, communities, right? I'm helping to form professions. This is my job as a doctor, yes? So I embody that healing practice in different interactions that I have with my colleagues, with my students. And then we also have Latina leaders in our community, in our history, in her story. So Juana Inez defied all odds and was an amazing, brilliant thinker, writer, poet. Frida Kahlo protested, even in a wheelchair, but she was standing up for what she thought was right and was expressing herself in all her pain and glory. Teresita Urrea was a healer, spiritual healer that came to El Paso and healed the masses, and they would persecute her, and they wanted her killed until she healed the wife of a colonel. And then they said, let her go, she's good, right? She can heal. Dolores Huerta, if you haven't seen her documentary, beautiful lessons of all the struggles and sacrifices. Because I don't want to sugarcoat things. When we pursue our educations, we're going against many odds and expectations. Many people did not expect us to go this far. Or as my mother would say, you already have 1 degree, why do you want more? Why are you being selfish? Either you're very dumb or very smart, right? What's wrong with you? And it was a professor who said, you know, your daughter has something, you gotta let her go. So I'm really grateful to him that he saw something in me and had the courage to speak up to my parents. And then Sonia Sotomayor, when she went to law school, when her first papers were returned, they were bleeding in red, they made her feel like she wasn't adequate enough, right? And she could have gone home and given up, but her mother was a seamstress, and she says, no, I'm in school, I have to help my mom. I just can't. Her father had already passed away. So we have amazing role models. We don't have to look outside, right? We have them within our own culture and our own families. So I'm going to move into funds of knowledge and cultural wealth. And so funds of knowledge speaks to this collective wisdom, whether we grew up in rural areas or in urban areas. It's this collective, right, level of skills and experiences and technical knowledge that has been passed down through generations in our communities. We are not empty. We are not deficient. And it's critical that we claim our funds of knowledge. When we walk into a classroom, when we walk into a job or an interview, no, I come with these skills that my parents have given me, that I've learned from my grandparents who were merchants, that I've learned from my grandparents who were farm workers, to get up early and get it done, right? So I know I'm much more alert in the mornings than at night, but I know I get up early and get it done, right? So we come in with strengths and assets, and we are not deficient of A, B, C, or D. And so it's important for us to claim our funds of knowledge because it counters deficit models of how Latinos are defined in the literature. I am sick and tired of the statistics, right? They're not very promising. But it is up to us to challenge them and say, no, those are just numbers. But these are our stories, these are our lessons, this is our value, these are our contributions. And then I'm referring to Tara Yoso's work on aspirational capital and cultural and capital wealth, because we have a lot of wealth in our culture, right? We have a value of family, we have faith, we have a lot of resourcefulness. And so we carry all that in our academic journeys and in our leadership efforts, right? When we move forward, we get to build also our aspirations. So in a research project we did of Latinas in STEM, how important it is to create experiences for women to learn by becoming, by doing. And so we realized that if young women have experiences to build their aspirations, by the time they get to college, they declare their majors, right? They challenge those naysayers to say, you don't belong in the lab. You don't belong in academia. We're like, I've been getting awards. I'm good at math. I'm good at science. My teacher said so, right? So step aside, right? We're not here to say, well, maybe you're right. Maybe I don't belong. My aspirations have been built, and not just by saying si se puede, pero así es como lo hacemos. This is how it's getting done, right? And we are doing, and in doing, we become and we solidify our identity in the economy. Okay, so knowing who we are as Latinas, Mexicanas, and Hispanas and allies, this is really important. And I'm going to turn to some community work we've done when we went into public spaces, libraries, downtown, in El Paso, and we asked women, how do you define yourself? So when I go into a conference and I'm looking for Latinas, I'm like, where are we? Where are we? Sometimes they're buenas, sometimes we're half and half, right? I'm always looking for people that look like me or relate to me. And so some refer to themselves as Hispanics. It's very common here in the borderlands or in Texas. Some nationally Latinas, if they have origins from Latin America. But what I found most is that people tend to associate with their places of origin, from their ancestors, Guatemalan, Mexican, New Mexican, Salvadorian, Texan. Okay, so this is really important for us, that we're mestizos and that we're indigenous, that we're also European, that we're a combination of multiple identities. And so I always say, yo soy Chicana, you know, I'm Mexican origin, my parents are from Mexico. But this is who I am, and this is what I stand for. I'm here to include you. Inclusion in higher education matters to me. Inclusion in social justice matters to me. We are here, and we might not all have the same labels, but recognizing that that's part of our heterogeneity, that's part of our diversity is important, right? And that allows us to continue to build community wherever we're at. And that oftentimes there's a racialization process. So the racialization of how we get pinpointed or kind of get earmarked into certain positions. And I said, that's a racialization process, right? I'm not here to fulfill your stereotype. I'm here to fulfill my journey. Yes, so know why we are in the academy. This is really important. We have to constantly ask ourselves, why am I here? Why am I here? Because if I lose track of that, I get dispersed, I get overextended, right? And so for me, it's been really important to mentor scholars to integrate their research and teaching in their service. Integrate it. We don't need to be fragmented, right? Try to integrate what we do and who we are to the best of our abilities. So when we enter research institutions, we want to teach, do we want to do research, do we want to do both? We need to ask, how will we be evaluated? Yes, as scholars, we need to publish, we need to teach courses in our specialized fields. So in getting tenure, we need to contribute to our fields of study, because our dossiers are going to get sent out to members of our academic fields, and they will evaluate whether we've contributed to the field or not. But also, I think it's important that when we're producing our materials, when we're publishing, we're doing meaningful work to us, not just to fulfill a whole bunch of checklists and boxes, but as a Chicana scholar, my community's needs and interests are part of why I'm here in the academy. So when I applied to teach, applied work, I want to do this kind of work, they said, yes, that's what we encourage you to do. So finding the fit, and Cynthia mentioned about finding that fit when we're choosing institutions, because getting tenure is critical for us to continue serving, right, as educators, as mentors to our students, as partners to our community. So this is really important, and Cynthia already addressed some of the steps to tenure, but knowing what moves us, what drives us, and why we're here to teach, why we're here to lead is critical for us to hone in our boundaries and our focus, right? And also ask for help when we need it and avoid that burnout, because otherwise we're so spread out thin that we can't do it all. Okay, so for me, it's important to create affinity groups that wherever we go, we're constantly building a sense of community, defining our identities. How are we doing? ¿Cómo estamos? How are we going to get this done? We problem solve together. We find solutions. We strategize. I'm constantly emailing, texting, calling people. What do you think? What do you think we should do about this? Right? And it creates a sense of belonging. I think when someone calls on you, that means they trust you, right? They trust you in the decision makings we're making. And it also creates a sense of place, right? That we have something to offer, and I'm valued in this community. Next. Yes. Okay. All right. So I'm going to quickly wrap it up. We have a community partnership here in El Paso. It's with Wise Latina International, a nonprofit organization. And again, we went to a lot of community forums, identified how Latinas saw themselves, how they prioritized their community needs, and then we had a call to action. In that call to action, we shared the findings that Latinas get paid 49 cents to a dollar that a white man earns. We said, this is not acceptable. We gotta change this, because we're getting devalued by our gender, the color of our skin, and our language. Not acceptable. So we started a LEAD initiative, the Leadership, Education, Advocacy Development Project. We started with a cohort of 7. We have 1 participant present here today. And each woman defined her project. And then since March to now, every month we've been investing in their leadership development by asking leaders of our community to share their strategies, share their stories. And then we've been sharing leadership strategies with these women for each one of them to develop their projects. So those projects include childcare, working with special needs adults, children who age out of educational systems, working with foster care youth, working on housing and social justice issues. So for me, creating opportunities to teach in the academy is important, but also if our community is hurting, then that's a very heavy burden. So to be a leader in the academy, to be an applied scholar means we need to contribute to our fields, contribute to our departments, contribute to our institutions, but also do meaningful work that matters to us, that gives us a lot of joy and a lot of purpose, but also that matters to our community. And when we recruit our students, we're bringing from our community and sending back to the community, right? And it's a really beautiful biofeedback model. So I'll share more of that information in the Q&A section, but I think my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gina. And now it's time for a Q&A session. And what I thought was we could answer some questions from UT and then come back to UTEP. We're monitoring the chat room and we don't have any questions so far, so feel free to send your questions via chat for those that are not at UT or UTEP. But do we have any questions there at UT Austin?
If there are any questions, if you have a question, can you come up to the speaker so they can hear you over there? And it'd be great if you introduce yourself, since we are expanding our network here and meeting each other. That would be great.
Hi, my name is Anna, and I'm a new faculty. I'm a pediatrician. And I was wondering if you've ever faced and how do you react to an underlying current of racism. Sometimes it's easier to react to an aggressive racism, but if you've ever faced, and how have you overcome that challenge in your professional life?
Asking me or?
Yes.
Dr. Lena Fuentes will be coming up to answer that question. Go ahead.
Answer it from here. From here. I faced it with anxiety. I faced it with at first confusion. I remember very specifically thinking, was that racist, sexist, or just a bad day? I can't tell sometimes. And then if there are other women present, it's like, vamos a ir al baño, and we go to the bathroom and say, what was that? Did you see that? What happened, right? And so, yes, I think for me, what's in my institution, what I faced, besides some of the overt kind of racism type stuff where I was perceived as being less competent or less able, it was a lot of the sexism that happened, and sometimes it's combined, right? I had this one male colleague in another school tell me that, because I was chair of the academic affairs committee, and it's the most powerful policymaking body on our campus for faculty and for the university. And he said, I confronted him because he kept interrupting me as I was speaking at one meeting. And he says, I just have to, I can't stop. You're just so hot and sexy. I love Hispanic women. You're all hot and submissive. What the F? Exactly. And so sometimes you just have to call it out, right? And it's easier to do when it's a peer. It's harder to do when it's a superior, but consult, get mentored, and document. Document. These things are not okay. And document. You don't have to use the documentation, but have a record of it and have an ongoing record of it. Because when I did that, there was a faculty, an administrator who broke into my office. He admitted that he broke into my office to see the pictures on my desk, to see what kind of competition he had. His married administrator who was pursuing me. I documented all of his emails. I documented all of the phone calls. I document. And by the time I was finished with my documentation, I went to my chair, who said, let's make an appointment with the dean. I went to the dean, and by the end of the week, he was out. Documentation is your friend.
I
Dr.
appreciate the
Santiago, do you want
documentary.
to respond?
There's
Oh,
also
no, sorry.
a strategy I learned about mirroring. So mirroring, you don't have to internalize the message. So you turn it around and you say, did you just say, I speak very good English for being a Mexican? Right? And then I said, and I'll say again, did you just say, did I hear you correctly? And then people will start stumbling. So that's a very typical response that I've gotten before when someone says, you speak very good English for a Mexican. And I said, you speak really good English too for an Anglo. Right? Have a good day, sir. I just turned it back in. So look it up, it's called mirroring. You just put it back out. Don't take it because it's so toxic, it breaks your spirit. Right? And then you have your comadres and you say, did you just hear that? How did you make sense of that? How would you interpret it? How would you respond? Right? And I also recommend a lot of the book, Fierce Conversations, where you actually have a strategy on how to say, this is what happened, this was the impact, this is how I felt, this is my contribution, in the future, this is what I need. So I don't get angry anymore. I just have a system now where I just put it back on them, right? And you continue to document until you have something that Cynthia can use to defend herself.
Thank you. So do we have a question here at UTEP? Well, I have one question. So one of the issues that I've seen over and over as Latinas and as women in general, that we know we have strengths, but we have not discovered them. So I wanted to ask both speakers, how did you discover your strengths? Cynthia, you want to start? How did you discover your strengths?
Thank you for asking that question. I think it's a constant evolution, right? At every developmental age that I'm in, I discover who I am all over again. And, 10 years ago, I didn't know who I had different strengths and different skills. So it's a constant evolution. I'm very fortunate in that I did have mentoring and grand mentors. And so, and by grand mentors, my mentor had a mentor who was also a Latina. And so we were 3 generations of mentor, and then I had a student who was a Latina too, and many of them, and so I was fortunate when they told me what my strengths were. And oftentimes that's how it goes, is that you're told that. We work so hard, as Gina was saying, we work so hard and we're doing so many different things. We often don't come to the surface to do an evaluation, a 360 on ourselves, right? And sometimes we just need that feedback from our peers, from our friends, from our family, and that's some of the ways that we know. Just today, I was in a therapy session with somebody who I said, but you haven't embraced your leadership. And she goes, I'm not a leader. And I said, you're doing this, and this. And when I just finished saying that we need to do that I'm doing this talk today, she said, oh, that would be a great idea to do in my program. I wonder what I can do. And I said, leaders talk that way. Leaders talk that way. Leaders, people who aren't leaders say, I want to attend. Leaders say, how can I organize that? So
there's something, I'll share my slides too, but there's this liberating structure called Troika. It's 3, based on 3. Leaders need to know when to lead. Leaders need to know when to step back so others may lead, right? And so it's a very quick interaction that you can say, this is a problem I have, this is what I've done to try to solve it, and I'm stuck. And then you hear from the other 2 consultants on how they would solve it. So within 15 minutes, 3 people can address problems, how they try to solve them, where they're stuck, and then get feedback. And that can be done in 15 minutes, right? So it's called Troika Consulting. And so I'm always thinking about workshops and trainings, and I have my first degree in international business. So we have skills, they're valuable. Don't give it all for free. I believe in pro bono work, but there's a lot of training that we've gone to, and later on we can give those workshops, right? Because I believe in growing leaders. We cannot do this alone. As leaders, we're always growing other leaders. We're always inviting other people to come with us, to come and participate and to take the lead, because we can't do it all. So part of our Wise Latina Leadership Initiative, we have another professor in leadership studies, we have Cynthia with the dean's office. So at any given time, we have to bounce off each other to take the lead, because life happens and we can't always be taking the lead on everything.
We have a question here on the chat, so I'm going to go ahead It asks for both Dr. Nuñez and de la Fuentes, can we have your support for initiative for ethnic studies, for Mexican American studies, K through 12? And we'll share the information about text with everybody. So yeah, we'll share that information. I think it's more of a question for support. So we'll share that information with the speakers. Are there any questions at UT?
Yes, you want to come up to the microphone, please?
Go ahead.
Yes, there's a question coming.
Hi, my name's Desiree Ortega. I have a question on how do you kind of keep that tenacity, especially when you go to mentors and faculty members for mentorship, and they kind of tell you have too many barriers, and maybe you should be at a different place where it's kind of like quote unquote easier for you, or where it's not so hard.
So I think it's important that you find the mentors, and it's not just one mentor. You find mentors. There was an art historian out of UCLA, and she taught me my culture through visuals, right? And I said, you're teaching me to value my culture through your art. And she had done her work in Michoacan. And she wasn't Latina, right? But I said, okay, you're gonna be one of my mentors, and you're gonna be one of my advisors, and then you get yourself invited to their homes. Or I picked my PhD advisor, he doesn't know it. I picked him, he didn't pick me. I saw him at a conference, and I said, who's that amazing Chicano scholar? And I said, I want to be his student, right? So I got in, and I said, you're my advisor, you're gonna work with me. I need a laptop, I need a job. He laughed, right? He said, anything else? No, senor, I never got anything for free, I'm used to working. I walked out with his laptop and on payroll, right? And this is a true story, but I have to be feeders. You have to find the people that will want to work with you, but that you want to work with. Because if that mentor is hurt or not doing well, it could be more poisonous, right? It could be more to your detriment. And a lot of mentors, unfortunately, because of our demographics, they just don't always look like us. But I'm going to go find the mentors. I'm going to go pursue them. And also ask, what are you working on? How can I help you? Right? So you're now an asset, not a deficit. You're not leeching off their time, but you're contributing to put their research forward. Because I'm bilingual. I know I have research skills. So if I work with you, I'm going to make you better. Right? And you practice it. Practice. It sounds super confident and cocky, but no, you need to know your assets. Because otherwise you don't know what you can offer. Right? And they just see you as someone else taking their time.
Thank you so much for that question. There's a great question on the chat, and they're asking, how can an Anglo professor be a good mentor to Latino students? And I think that is an amazing question. So I don't know if Cynthia can answer that.
I would love to. I also want to answer that other question too. If I might. My biggest advice is not to take it personally. The person who said that to you, and what they said was more a reflection of them and where they are in their lives and what they believe and what their biases are, than it is anything to do with you. When I was an undergraduate, I told one of my faculty members that I wanted to go to graduate school. And he said, I don't believe in educating premenopausal Hispanic women because all they do is use their uteri. I sent him a copy of my dissertation. Okay? It wasn't about me. He didn't know me. It was about his racism and his sexism. Okay? Biggest advice I have is don't take it personally. The other comment was about what?
How can an Anglo professor be a good mentor to a Latina or a Latino?
We can get mentors from everybody. There are allies all over the place, and some of my favorite allies are straight white people because they can get us in. And they'll take us places. They'll take us to the meetings, to the conferences, and they'll say, "Hey, let me introduce you to Cynthia. You should listen to her, or come with me to this." Some of my favorite people are straight white people who are strong allies. And what you do to figure them out is watch and listen and hear what they say. And it's worth it. It's worth it. Just paying attention, hear what they say. Oftentimes they didn't even get you into the program because they wanted to see you fail. It doesn't look good on them. It might be because they actually value what you have to offer.
I think also white men can be aware of their privilege, right? Just be aware of your privilege and how you can use that privilege. A lot of our students have never had opportunities before. Many of our students have never gotten on an airplane and presented at a conference. When we took a kid to San Francisco, he got an upset stomach and was sick the whole conference. And then I said, why are you shaking? He said, this is the first time I've been on an airplane. He was 26 years old, right? So don't take that. There's a lot of things we take for granted. And I think also faculty of color, we go into the academy, we think, well, you should be able to do it, I did it. So just being very aware of our privileges and extending a hand and being kind and getting to know this white professor who spoke to my parents. And they said, well, maybe Dr. Davies knows something. He seems to be a smart guy, right? So he was able to speak to my parents so they can let me go to grad school. So you can be a mentor, you can be an ally, and you say, your daughter's gonna be okay. We're gonna be here to support her. So offer to be of support.
Thank you so much. I think that we've run out of time, correct?
I think we have a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, yeah, go ahead. I think we can take that last one question.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for being here. I was just hoping that you could share a little bit about your journey into academia. So what sparked you to go into academia? Was there anything in particular that happened in your career as a PhD student that led you to go that way?
Actually, as a PhD student, I didn't want to become an academic because I didn't have great role models for what it meant to be a teacher. I had good role models for what it meant to be a researcher, but not to be an instructor, right? And so I prepared myself to go into counseling center work. While I was on internship at a counseling center in California, we had to do rotations, and one of the rotations was academic. And so I said, reluctantly, kicking and screaming, I did it, and I fell in love with it, and that's how. So it was an accidental academic. It wasn't planned at all.
So, as a little girl, I would write signs on my door that would say, Dr. Nuñez is in. So I think I was 5, and that's where aspirations matter, and our dreams matter, and we need to learn to dream big and not squash each other's dreams, right? So I said, don't ask permission for when you want to be, just do it. And then all the people who were hating and critiquing you, they're going to say, how the hell did you do it? I didn't ask permission. I just went forward. And then as an undergrad, I became involved in campus politics. I got elected, and I went to college during Pete Wilson's Prop 187. And Chicano students were facing a lot of hate crimes on campus in San Diego State. And I realized that it had to be us, that it was up to us to defend our right to an education. And so by being a higher ed leader as a student, I took it in and I kept on going to school. And I kept on fighting for us to have a right to an education because we belong here. And you shouldn't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Thank you so much. We had a lot of questions, and there was a question about intersectionality. Do we have any Afro-Latinas here? No, we don't have any, but there's many Afro-Latinas, and so when it comes to intersectionality, we need to remember that. So we're also different. And as a last comment, I just want to say that to the student that asked about sexist comments, or I always told my boss, I said, well, even a dog knows the difference between a trip and a kick. So we need to remember that. And also, let's change the paradigm here. Let's now equate Latino and Latina and women with intellectual power, intellectual and political power. So that's what it's all about. Thank you so much for being here. So now I leave you with our colleagues in UT Austin for some last comments.
Yes, thanks, Ivonne. So, several of us mentioned the Latina. Okay, Latina Researchers Network. So they co-sponsored the event. I'm a member of the network. Dr. Ivonne Santiago is a member of the network, and so is Melissa, and this is how we came together. So Melissa, can you tell us a little bit about the network academy?
Sure. So to join the network, you can email either Sylvia or Josie at latinaresearchers.com. That's also their website, Latina Researchers. And essentially, it's a network of Latina researchers that's national across the country. It has, I believe, what do they say, over 3,000 members nationwide since its inception. So it originated in New York City, but obviously it's grown nationally to this network of 3,000 Latina researchers. And this is how I connected with UTEP, with Ivonne and Santiago at UTEP, and also with Deborah here in Austin in Texas. And so I highly encourage you to join, especially if you're considering a career as a researcher or in academia. And they have a conference every 2 years, and this year their conference is in New York City in August. And so if you're interested in joining, you can check out their social media profiles and also their website for that support. So I think that's
it, but remember that, you know, we talked a lot about networking and having that support as women and Latinas, and so that's what we're trying to do here, and trying to kind of develop some areas, pockets of women with the same interests. And so we're here remotely with our colleagues at UT, so thank you so much. They initiated the conference, so some last remarks, Deborah?
Yeah, so what we're going to do after this is we're going to have a small reception so we can continue to ask questions from our wonderful speaker, meet each other. Also, we're hoping to sponsor more events so that we can get together, share ideas, and expand our network. So we're going to be saying goodbye to our members at UTEP. Thank you for joining us, people at Texas Tech and throughout Texas. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Also, I wanted to let you know that we did create a small evaluation form. So if you would, it's at the front. I don't know where they ended up now, but give us some feedback. We really want to know what other kinds of activities you would like to be involved in, whether the formats, what sorts of topics do you want to discuss so that we can be responsive to your needs and create this community of Latina scholars. So thank you for coming. We'll say goodbye to our friends from UTEP, and we will start our reception here. They already had lunch together.
Yeah,
they did a pre-party, we're the post-party.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.